So I just want to introduce to you real quick, Edwin. Edwin is from DeltaSoundLabs. They create software for musicians, VSTs for various DAWs, and Edwin actually does some of the programming, co-founder, right?
Yep. So I'll give a quick overview
Sure,
about Delta. So DeltaSoundLabs is basically collaboration between myself and two other guys. Ricky, who's a friend of mine, who used to be a professor of music technology out in Hoboken, and his friend John Harding, who's also an academic in music technology in Ireland. And the three of us all have different specialties. I'm kind of the software guy. John is a crack hardware engineer, and Ricky is he's our CTO. He's kind of our creative. We all have skills in all these other areas, but we complement each other pretty nicely. We do VSTs, like Ilya was saying. We have Maxwell Lab device also. Actually, if you're interested, how many people here use Ableton? I think that's most people. Other DAWs? Okay. If you do use Ableton, the Maxwell Lab device is available here for free. You can just go here and download it. This is a Risé filter, basically. Generates like Risé tones, which are kind of like, they sound like they're continuously increasing tones, but it's actually just they cycle in a certain way so that it gives you that impression. And then the VST that I've been working on is something that Ricky has been involved with granular synthesis for a very long time, and so this was his idea, and then I just helped him make it a reality. But if you email beta@deltasoundlabs.com, we'll get you a copy. You'll get you access, so you can log in and check out this VST here. This is there's like a short video on how it works. I'm kind of, I don't know. I can show it, but I don't know if I want to. Well, I'll show it, and then it's.
Hi there, and thanks for testing Stream, our granular sampler. So Stream basically consists of two grains running together. You can change the grain size of each of those grains. You can augment the phase relationship. They can be completely on top of one another, half a cycle out of phase, or a full cycle apart. Each grain has a low-pass filter, and you can filter those independently. And then there's a mix parameter as well. The general idea is that you can record in audio into a circular buffer. So let's give that a shot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can play it forwards and backwards. 1, 5, 5, 5, 4, 4, 4, 1. And we can also apply jitter. 5, 3, 1. So yeah, pretty cool. All MIDI sequenceable as well. So basically, if you take the range of C -2 through -1, you can sequence the position of where the read pointer is going to be in the buffer. So here's an example of that. If we just create a MIDI track, you can sequence rhythms with it. So if I play this, just output to audio channel 3 to stream, you can see it's now being effectively step sequenced.
be creative with the skills that I have as a medium for self-expression as well. Anyway, so granular synthesis is basically you take a sample of sound, so you record some sound, which can either be live or recorded, and you chop it up into small subsamples, and those are the grains that we're talking about. Because you're just having these sound samples, and then also like Ricky was showing in the video, you can actually do some kind of nice distortion effects, and just kind of like make some really gnarly sounds by overlapping the grains in certain ways or changing the phase relationship between them. So here, and there's also low pass filters for both the left and right grain, or the first and second grain that you can set up here too. So it's kind of fun to play with, and it's interesting because it's such a simple idea. There's other granular synthesizers that are out there, but they tend to be a lot more complicated. This actually gives you a nice effect, but with a relatively simple set of grains and simple set of controls. This one is in beta. It's freely available. We're actually kind of working on a new version that will probably be out commercially when we get it done. But one of the things that we're looking for is feedback too. So if you guys are interested in playing with it, we'd love to hear what you like, what you don't like about it. Ricky is he's a guitarist, and he really likes working with it, just like with the capture set on and just like recording live straight out of his guitar. I'd be really interested to hear what
I was actually thinking the same thing.
yeah, so with the violin it might work really well for you too. So I think you said you were a developer. I heard you guys were talking about like Juice.
Yeah.
That's actually what this is developed in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, it's a pretty great platform for doing VSTs. For those that aren't familiar, also like the digital audio workstations are they're great. The VST is basically a standard for plugins, audio plugins for digital audio workstations. That's the primary one, I guess. There's also, if you use Logic, I guess they use a different plugin standard called audio units. Juice will actually produce plugins for both.
Is Juice like a development program?
It's a development environment. I could go back to this a little bit to show you.
It's a development kit for audio APIs. So
Yeah.
Oh,
So one of the things, like you can program directly against the VST API, but then you're basically just programming against you're programming just for VSTs. Like I said, one of the things that's nice about Juice is it actually will abstract away the plugin so that you can actually develop stuff in for other kinds of plugin mechanisms. So if you want to produce also audio units and stuff for Logic, you can do it within this as well. They have some actually hold on a second. This is basically C++ code. So there's still a level of knowledge that is kind of required for knowing how to program in C++. But they do also have some nice ways of handling kind of UI, sort of drag and drop UI kind of things. So it helps you with the UI somewhat. So for some of our panels, we use that as well. So just for layout. But ultimately under the covers it's C++, so you have all the power of the C++ language. I'm not going to get into that, that's super technical, but it's, I don't know. Then there's also, aside from this, there's another way of building plugins for live in particular called Max for live. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, that'll have to stay for another session, but it's basically an audio program, the plugin that actually, we're not going to you're able to actually build your own plugins in Ableton. Have you guys used it before? Are you guys good?
So the interesting thing about Max is it's a visual programming language. So if you're not familiar with like textual programming languages like C and C++, that's a really it's really kind of a high learning curve in order to try to overcome. Max is much easier. It's basically you have the graphical components that you can link together graphically and make what they call patches. Their programs are patches, which will process audio for you. and you can actually package them together into plug-in devices. So the Resay device right here is a Max for Live patch. Max for Live device. So Max was recently purchased or acquired by Ableton. So there's going to be even better integration between those two going forward. But it's a good way to kind of get started.
I was gonna show like the SoundLab version, but yeah, you can imagine it's just like components. Basically, you take an input component and connect it to another one, and you could do various things with it. Let's see if I can actually find one. So these are things that people have built. You can just download a quick plugin from somebody else. So you don't have to go through an actual company. All of you guys can build your own patches, and unfortunately it's not working right now, but you can build your own patches, and you can build your own VSTs, plug it in, plug it out, and then actually share it with everybody, and they're able to modify them. Just like you would like a hardware synth, essentially it's all in software.
Yeah, if you have access to develop these plugins, how much work is it to, like, do you have to have a big knowledge of digital signal processing to code for that?
You need to have some knowledge. It's actually not a bad way to learn digital signal
Yes.
processing, honestly, because you start out with some sort. You can start out with a block that's like an oscillator, and then you can hook that to. You can hook it directly to the output, and then hear the sound come out. But then you can also put different blocks in between for doing like filters or buffers, cycle buffers, and stuff like that.
Okay, it is. I found
you
it.
got it?
Sorry, yeah. So
Yeah.
this is what it would look like. You essentially can just open this plugin, and over here you'll have the ability to create your own, audio ins and outs, and then put various.
Yeah.
Is that built into Ableton 9 or 10?
I don't know if it's able to make 9 and 10 for Max, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they include Max already.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they do have Max.
All right, that's great. Yeah.
So you're able to actually do this stuff right in Ableton.
Yeah. It is a programming language in its own
Yeah.
right. It's different because it's graphical, but it's definitely a much lower learning curve than going to C++ or something like that.
Literally plug and play. Like you literally grab components, you can move them around and then connect them up. It's just like a visual workflow. And actually, you can actually program in Python and JavaScript.
Yeah. You can make. Right. So like for some things, if you want to, you can integrate. I don't know if this is the same thing as what you're saying, but for instance, like in your visual programming language, say you actually need a component that's more easy to write in a textual language like Python or JavaScript. You can do that and then import it as a block, so that you can wire it into the rest of your program. And I think we actually did that in as part of Resay as well for some things. So I mean it's pretty neat because I think a lot of artists like this because it's relatively easy to get started and it's available inside of your DAW if you're using Ableton. So.
Do you want to briefly show how your synth works? You want to try and open up Max, but unfortunately it's not working for me.
Yeah.
For some
Can I
reason.
ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
What was the sound that you were using for that thing with the MIDI arpeggiating? Was it just a bass like a white noise and you got all that out of the grain?
I don't know what sample he was using. I think it was. Yeah, it's only a 2-second buffer, so I think it was probably either. I don't know actually. I can't really say. But I think it's probably just like if I had to guess, it was like some just guitar like.
Some very basic sound.
Very basic sound, and then you can start. You can actually get some really interesting sounds just by.
I can tell. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Is there any way that we suggest people getting into maybe programming VSTs? I would love to make my own VST.
Yeah. So I actually think Max is a much easier ramp to creating one. The downside with doing a Max for Live device is it's basically only usable in Ableton.
Okay.
If you want to develop a VST that is cross-platform, then Juice is a good way to go.
Okay.
But it does require a lot more knowledge about C++.
Cool.
There's something that was recently announced by Juice. They're actually trying to come up with I forget what they're calling it, but sort of a higher level language for building plugins or building audio programs essentially, and it's completely new. There's actually nothing that's available that lets you do it. It's more of a vision, but I mean, they're the idea was that like there's these high level languages in for doing like WebGL, 3D graphics that you can do in your browser. It's basically like a high level language that maps down to individual low level complicated hardware kinds of things. We don't have that for audio. So the idea is that we should have that for audio, and then be able to efficiently map it down to whatever kind of device you have. So I think it's a great vision, but still very early days. Before we can go
Cool.
there.
This is really cool.
So, what if you wanted to make it more stereoscopic? Do you have that mechanism?
Oh, for stream?
Yeah.
That's actually so. As I said, my friend Ricky, he's well, actually, I don't know if I said this, but one of the things that he's done a lot in his research career has been spatial audio.
Yeah.
We were actually here at the Technicolor Experience Center in Culver City last year, doing a technical residency. We were in their motion capture studio, and we set up a hemispherical speaker array, and we were basically mapping sounds to individual motion tracking markers, so you could like walk around the space and like do that sort of thing. So the idea for the next, actually, he was just texting me today. Is like he wants to do like a spatial system for stream. So he hasn't told me the details of how that's going to work, but he has it clear in his mind apparently. So that's something to look forward to.
So if you guys are not familiar, this is called ambisonics. Actually, Max for Live 8 for Ableton 9. It's 10, right?
9 and 10.
9. Actually has this feature, so you're able to actually program in multi-channel speaker arrays. So you can actually have a room like this, and you can have multiple speakers everywhere, and you can actually stream different sounds to it, and you can walk around and have a different experience depending where you're at. And people have used this in conjunction with VR, for example. So when you put on a VR headset, you have a full VR experience, and now you walk around and you actually have sound from different places.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So like in the beginning there's just mono sound, and then you have like just left-right channel, and then surround sound is nice, but it's basically just only on one plane. Ambisonics basically extrapolates that to anywhere above, below, anywhere around you.
And multiple speakers as well.
And yeah, you can have a whole bunch of speakers. There's a certain point where you saturate, and it doesn't make sense to have
Right.
many more
And
speakers.
there's also like standalone where you can make it stereoscopic within monoplane. So that's why I just.
Oh, within the monoplane. Yeah. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Instead of movement and spatial mapping. So I do spatial mapping, but if you're doing it, you have to get the monoplanes within the frames.
You mean like for a headset kind of thing,
Right.
like when you're walking around the space?
Right.
Oh yeah.
Not walking, just to stand alone.
Oh okay.
Yeah.
Right. Oh okay. Maybe you should talk to Ricky. And he knows a lot more about that than I do.
It's directional and distance. It's an algorithm for it.
It's there are trade-offs for the headset ones as well as the speaker mounted ones. I mean, one of the trade-offs is that if you have fixed speaker locations, there's generally like a sweet spot, a listing location in the center of the space, and if you move to other parts of the space, you kind of lose the kind of resolution or the effect essentially gets distorted as you move to the corners, and then the headset one there's problems because everybody's head is different, and there's special forget what the acronym is, but it's basically like a function to basically map like what the acoustics of your particular head are in order to get the sound to work correctly. So that's a
And
big
your head
research area.
motions too.
Hmm?
And your head motions.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that's pretty interesting. But it's a more relevant topic because of VR, and there's sort of headset mounted VR, but there's also sort of shared experience VR kind of things where you may have like projection mapping or something like that where you're walking through the space.
Augmented reality as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So lots of interesting things to I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of really cool tech that comes out all the time, and we I think this is a cool space because like different, you know, I mean, like even in this room, I mean, you were doing, stuff with spatial audio mapping, I guess, and we got a crack hardware engineer here, and software people, and I mean, and artists as well. So I mean, what we could do together, I think, is far more than what we can do individually.
Cool. Any more questions, guys?
So I looked up while we were talking here the juice environment and the VST stuff, and it seems like they both want money. And I'm sort of wondering, like, well, so what do you do to support the creation of VSTs? Because it seems like if you give it to people, you're gonna have to like pay all these people money.
That's true. So right now, Juice you can use for free. I mean, like the version we have now is sort of the free version, and the caveat is like when it loads up, there's like a Juice icon that shows up in the corner. If you want to, get rid of that and just brand it yourself, then you have to pay them some amount of money. And for that, yeah, we'd have to have some particular sales. So right now, we're kind of trying to gauge interest by giving it out for free, finding out what the interest is for.
You say it's on the actual VST?
Well, actually, when you start it up, so
when you start it up.
like when you actually, I don't know if it's going to do it now because it's already started.
That's
so like, if we close it, there's like a little thing in the corner. It just shows up for a second and then it fades away. But then, I mean, so there are marketplaces for VSTs, and so that's
Wait, people pay money?
Oh yeah,
VSTs, yeah.
spent
Yeah.
tons and tons of money on VST.
500. Soundtoys actually just had a deal on a Black Friday deal. It was 50% off. It was 50% off 500. So people, will spend 500, thousands even.
But we're
on
talking
these VSTs.
Slice also is now you can lease VSTs, so
Yeah.
people who
Yeah.
can afford them, you can lease them. So I mean the market is, I think the torrent life is kind of getting to the left field now. I think people are expecting to pay.
Yeah.
So I think we're getting back to the research of paying for stuff now.
It's also getting affordable, right? So
Yeah.
you want to create some stuff, and you need $1,000 worth of studio equipment, or studio VSTs. You're able to rent that for $10 a month on Splice. That's a lot more reasonable to be able to pay that than $1,000 up front.
How does anybody afford this? They don't pay us.
Well, there's different tiers to it. Like Melodyne, for example, is $500, but that's for the full studio version. That's for somebody that would be in, one of the major labs. But for somebody that might need just like a simplified version, they have a version that's $50, and it does a good job. It's worth the money. It's absolutely worth the money. What's that?
I paid for pretty much all my VSTs.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
becoming relatively affordable to have very, very high level professional gear now. $500 does seem like a lot of money, but for the amount of what you get, it's totally worth it. Totally worth it. I just spent $250 on sound toys, and I have to say, where's my sound toys? Sound.
I love sound toys.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're really good. Like this VST crystallizer, just amazing, very, very fulfilling sounds. Like just amazing stuff that you can do with it. This whole suite is $250, but it's probably the only thing you're gonna need for a long time. I know most records use Decapitator on all of their drums. I've got some people that I work with that work with really big name people, and they said they use this on everything. It's basically a saturator. There's certain characteristics about these things, just like any hardware that you would go and buy, that you can't just like replicate with other things. They can come close. It's the difference between Pepsi and Coca-La. They're basically the same, but
7-Up.
7-Up. There you go. Yeah. There you go.
If I can interject, the Max for Live, the designing them, I have friends that design them, and I use their made Max for Live VSTs daily. They're proprietary for something I like, but there's markets for that, and there's people that list them, and it's all free. So there's that side of it too. If you want to just get some weird stuff and try it, see how it works.
I made a whole digital music
it's
workstation thing here, and I can't get $10 for it. I mean, hell, this sounds like the plugins cost more than my software and the Nintendo.
Sounds like you need a pivot.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
If it's a VST, you're
Just
definitely
like,
For
what the
market.
fuck?
So you can actually go on Max for Live 8 or Cycling 74, and there's a whole marketplace where you can actually download people's Max for Live plugins. They'll be able to share. I don't know if they're for pay, to be honest with you, because I actually haven't
I think some are, yeah.
But you can actually, wherever it's on here, you can actually go and actually
The
download.
paid ones are from artists, big name people.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can
I
actually
get
go
the free
and,
one.
go and download and experiment and change it up and like remix them and
Right.
put them back up there. Yeah. So there's a whole community for this, and so basically this thing that you would have had to buy, you can basically remake it on your computer.
Yeah.
And there's actually some software by bigger companies such as Native Instruments, Reactor. I don't know if Reactor if it works on here right now, but you can actually replicate full hardware synthesizers right on your computer.
But you do know that certain people say that's never true unless it's analog.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So that's
Alright.
yeah, so that's the other thing. So we actually, like, as part of Delta, we actually do produce analog synthesizer, like completely analog synth equipment for Eurorack, and that's mainly because John is like a real he's a Eurorack nerd, and he basically he decided he wanted all this Eurorack stuff and he couldn't afford it, so he figured out how to make it, and so he's been pumping out stuff. But yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, I'm not enough of an audiophile to know the difference necessarily, but it's there is something that is nice to have that tactile feedback of being able to kind of make sounds. But one of the other things I thought that you guys said was really important was like the being able to see, like I've been to some electronic music performances and it's just like somebody down here twiddling knobs and you don't know if like they're actually doing anything, and having sort of like that connection with the audience actually, like that's what I loved about your performance. You have that violin, you actually know that you're putting the effort to do something, you know where the music's coming from, how it's being made. I think that one of the interesting things to me is also like, how do we actually do that for electronic music? Are there different kinds of performance systems that we can make to make things?
I think that's a
Yeah.
question of actually making your own hardware
Yeah.
and making your own instruments and music hacking.
Yeah.
You know.
So I mean, actually that could be another pivot for you too, because I think you'd be well suited for that sort of thing too.
Custom made instruments. I think that's the whole.
Teenage engineering.
I think that's the whole point of this kind of group. I think is to create your own stuff. Like you should be making your own gloves and your own shoes that you're gonna be using, so to speak, for your performances or your art. I think that's the whole point. We have so much material. We have so much ability now, like to 3D print stuff and go buy a microprocessor and create a quick synth or something like that. So I think there's no reason that you shouldn't be doing that now. So even VSTs.
Yeah. And some of the one of the things we got to do last year was we were at ModeFest, and one of the artists there that was probably the best artist I saw is an artist called Author and Punisher. I don't know if you guys have heard of him, but he's an electronic musician, but he has this performance rig that he's got, which is like literally like some joystick handle on a slider where he just like will bash it back and forth for like really heavy kicks, and he's got buttons on it to do other things, and he's up there sweating, he's up there actually doing something, and it was pretty cool to see that sort of thing.
There's some other people called, like for example, Beardy Man creates his own completely own like essentially rig that he uses loops and voice control. Yeah. Yeah, he's got like multiple iPads and MIDI controllers, and he'll loop voices and this sort of thing, and he'll create his own thing. So there's that. And actually here we have, you guys look around, there's some MIDI controllers that actually are using joysticks and gamepads here to actually create controller stuff. So you don't have to go very far to create your own controller. You can just grab grab your friend's controller and dissect it and just tell them lost or something. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. You guys have any more questions? No? Alright, well, thank you so much for coming by. That was really great. Where does everybody find you?
So you just find us on DeltaSoundLabs.com. There's links for various social media things on that page at the bottom.
Cool, awesome. Well, I'm Ilya. I'm on SoundCloud, #1 LYAO. We've got Instagram, Music Hackers. If you guys haven't joined the mailing list, that's how I send out information about next upcoming meetings and stuff like that. This is an iterative process. This is our second kind of meeting and group. I hope to get more interactive. I want to have hackathons, and I want to have workshops where we're actually doing things where we can take something away. So if you guys have any suggestions, any comments on anything that should be focused on, or people that you want to see come by, or even places where we can have it at. Like I said, it's still growing, it's still kind of in process. But this is the idea of, having tech and creativity and all this kind of stuff merged. So it's an open forum to talk about all of the above. Whether it can be, computer hacking, VSTs, hardware hacking, or even just workflows, working on how you can make music more efficiently and effective. That's, hacking as well. All of the above. So I really appreciate you guys coming. Thank you so much. Please stay in contact with me, shoot me an email, or just give me a shout somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. So how do we get there? Just email data at DeltaSoundLabs.